You have probably heard this claim. Your body completely replaces itself every 7 years. Every cell you have now will be gone in 7 years, replaced by a new one. The person you were in 2019 is physically, materially a different person than the one sitting here today. It is one of the most widely repeated facts in popular science. It is also wrong. Not completely wrong. Some parts of it are true, and the truth is genuinely remarkable. Your body does replace most of its cells on a regular basis. Some of them are replaced so fast that the version of you that started watching this video is already shedding the cells that existed when you pressed play. But other parts of your body, specific critical structures, have never been replaced since the day they were formed. Some of them were formed before you were born. They are, right now, the oldest things inside you. Older than every memory you have. Older than your name. The 7-year claim misses the most fascinating part of the story, the parts of you that never change. This video is about what your body actually replaces, how fast it does it, and, more importantly, what it refuses to replace and why. We'll start with the cells that cycle fastest. Some of them live for only 3 days, then the ones that take years. Then the structures in your body that are as old as you are. How scientists proved all of this using radioactive carbon left over from Cold War nuclear bomb tests, one of the most ingenious measurement techniques in modern biology. And then the question that ties it all together. If most of your body is new, but the parts that store your identity are original, are you the same person you were 7 years ago? The biology has a surprisingly specific answer. Let's start with the fastest. The cells lining your stomach are replaced every 2 to 3 days. This makes sense when you consider what they endure. They sit in a bath of hydrochloric acid strong enough to dissolve metal. If they didn't replace themselves constantly, your stomach would digest itself. The cells lining your intestines, the gut epithelium, are replaced every 3 to 5 days. You shed roughly 30 to 40 grams of dead intestinal cells per day. That is not a typo. Every day you are losing and rebuilding a thin layer of your entire digestive tract. Your skin replaces its outer layer, the epidermis, every 2 to 3 weeks. The dead cells on the surface are constantly flaking off. House dust is roughly 70% dead human skin cells. You are, at this very moment, shedding parts of yourself into the room around you, and your red blood cells live for approximately 120 days. Your bone marrow produces roughly 200 billion new red blood cells every single day to replace the ones that are removed by your spleen. 200 billion per day. Now the slower ones. Your liver, one of the most regenerative organs in the body, replaces its cells every 200 to 300 days. This is why the liver can recover from significant damage. If you lose up to 75% of your liver, it can regrow to its full size within months. It is the only solid organ in the body that can do this. Your fat cells are replaced at a rate of roughly 10% per year. That means the average fat cell lives about 8 to 10 years. You don't lose or gain fat cells easily in adulthood. Your skeleton is replaced entirely roughly every 10 years. Bone is not a static scaffold. It is a living tissue, constantly being broken down and rebuilt. The skeleton you have now is not the skeleton you had in 2016. Every bone in your body has been quietly disassembled and reassembled while you were using it. Think of it as renovating a building without ever closing it. So where does the 7-year number come from? It's an average. If you take all the different cell types and calculate the mean turnover rate, you get a rough average of 7 to 10 years. As an average, it's not wrong, but an average hides the extremes. Saying your body replaces itself every 7 years is like saying the average temperature on Earth is 15 degrees. It doesn't tell you about the Sahara or Antarctica. The Sahara of your body is your gut lining, running hot with renewal. The Antarctica is something else entirely, and this is where the story gets genuinely extraordinary. The lens of your eye is made of specialized cells called crystallins. These cells formed during embryonic development before you were born. They have never been replaced, not once. The cells at the center of your lens are the oldest living structures in your body. If you are 40, the core has been sitting there, unchanged, for 40 years plus the months before your birth. You are seeing the world right now through material that was manufactured in your mother's womb. This is not a metaphor. The proteins in the center are the original proteins. Because they cannot be replaced, they accumulate damage over decades, which is why people develop cataracts. It is original equipment running without maintenance for your entire life. Then there are your neurons. The majority of neurons in the cerebral cortex, the part responsible for thought and identity, were generated before or shortly after birth. They are not replaced. The vast majority of cortical neurons, the ones that store your memories, your skills, your personality, are the same neurons that formed in infancy. The neuron that encoded your first word is still there. When cortical neurons die, they are not replaced. The piece of identity they carried is gone permanently. The brain traded renewal for continuity, and continuity is what makes you, you. The cells of the heart muscle replace at an extraordinarily slow rate, roughly 1% per year. Over a lifetime, fewer than half of your heart muscle cells will ever be replaced. Your inner ear contains hair cells that detect sound. In mammals, these cells do not regenerate. Once they are damaged by loud noise or aging, they are gone. Hearing loss is permanent. And your tooth enamel is produced once during development and is never regenerated. The cells that created it die after it's formed. The factory that made it no longer exists. How do scientists know the age of a specific cell? The answer came from an unlikely source: nuclear weapons testing. Between 1955 and 1963, hundreds of bombs were detonated in the atmosphere. These explosions released massive amounts of carbon-14. Levels in the air roughly doubled. Then, in 1963, atmospheric testing stopped and levels began declining slowly. Every living cell incorporates carbon from the atmosphere when it is created. The carbon-14 signature in a cell's DNA acts as a timestamp, a birth certificate written in radioactive carbon, courtesy of the Cold War. By measuring the carbon-14 level in a cell's DNA and comparing it to the known atmospheric curve, scientists could determine the year the cell was created with remarkable precision. The results confirmed the extremes: red blood cells, 120 days, fat cells, 8 years, and cortical neurons, the same age as the person. They were original. The heart does replace some cells, just far too slowly to recover from a heart attack. Nuclear weapons, it turns out, gave biology a clock. Why would the body choose not to replace certain cells? The answer is a trade-off. Every time a cell divides, it copies its DNA, and every copy introduces the possibility of error, cancer. The cells that divide most frequently are most likely to become cancerous. The brain and heart built cells that almost never divide to avoid this risk. But the cost is that damaged cells cannot be replaced. This trade-off is not the final word. Stem cell research aims to rebuild damaged hearts and lost neurons. Medicine is beginning to re-engineer the terms of that optimization. The ancient Greeks had a thought experiment called the ship of Theseus. If you replace every plank in a ship until no original material remains, is it still the same ship? Your body answers this. Your body does not replace every plank. You are not entirely renewed, and you are not entirely permanent. You are both simultaneously. Identity is carried in the parts that stay. The neurons that store your first memory are the same neurons that formed it. The lens through which you see this sentence is the same lens that saw daylight for the first time on the day you were born. You are not the same person you were 7 years ago, except in the places that matter most.